It's
My
totally
mom.
my mom is a huge fan. Hey everyone in LinkedIn land. Yes, my mom is my biggest fan. It's cool. Hopefully your mom is your biggest fan as well in the work you're doing in the world. It's another episode of Untangled. Hello everyone out there. If you're tuning in live, great to have you here. If you're watching this later, thanks for tuning in later. It's Jen Frazier, CEO of Firefly Partners, and your host of Untangled. Let's see. I've been doing kind of nonprofit tech work for like 20 years. Gosh, it's getting a little long in the tooth here of what we've been doing. And I started Untangled last year to sort of have conversations with other interesting and smart people in the space and talk about how we can help our nonprofit and social good friends do better work with crazy technology. And the landscape is like in a blender right now. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, last week I was talking about us being in a pool of jello that is not quite hardened. It was a good one. We came up with that analogy where there's still swimming happening. We haven't hardened yet. So I like to talk to folks who are helping to shape what we're doing in the nonprofit tech space right now. So very excited this week to have Ryan Baillargeon from Grass Riots on our friends to the north. Thank you, Canada, for not all of you not hating us down here. We love our friends to the north. I still love our friends to the north anyway, and plan to visit and maybe, sometime maybe try to get myself up there more permanently. We'll see the way this country is going. But love to have you here, Ryan. You've been in the space for a million years. Can't wait to hear and talk about your. I love the title you came up with, building tools for the Agentic digital fundraiser. We're going to unpack what that means. Ryan, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So I love to start every episode with a little bit of just tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background, and sort of how you got to doing the work that you're doing today.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you, Jen, so much for having me on this podcast. It's been one of the things that I like to watch to keep up to date on what's happening in our sector. And the conversations have been great and the people have been great. So honored to be here today and have something interesting to talk about. Hopefully, we'll see.
Yes, 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 you do.
But just a little bit about my background. I've also been in the sector in digital for 20 years. And I started out not even knowing the sector existed, really kind of taking the path as most like software developers, which is you think, oh, am I going to go to Silicon Valley and work for Microsoft at the time because they were the biggest? And,
Right.
or IBM, and oh no, it's going to be some sort of like put my hood down job in front of a computer typing out code for the rest of my life. That sounds wonderful. What did I do
That
this
sounds
for?
amazing.
But I had kind of this, kind of like hallmark experience supporting a small campaign here in Canada, helping mobilize for change in cancer control. And I was like, what is this work? This is amazing. And and I got hooked, like I think many people do, into this world of being a change agent, of helping make the world be better, in the ways that we can,
Yeah.
but from a technology lens. And so that was what I brought to the table was, always thinking about how we could use technology to solve some of the problems that we had, or take advantage of, the internet in its infancy in terms of organizing and mobilization. And so I've been doing that for my career in many ways and with many organizations, but most recently with an agency that I started in 2014 called Grass Riots. And so we've been, kind of friend competitors north and south of the border for many years, Jen. And I've always admired what Firefly Partners did and does. And so, like I always look forward to the time we get to spend together at conferences and hearing from each other. So it's great to be here too.
Yeah. So obviously we've had many conversations. Me and a lot of my agency friends have had a lot of conversations over the last few years about the landscape for the agency, or sort of like I was just sort of like I call myself in this like nonprofit adjacent world where I'm like I'm not in it. I also was inside nonprofits for a while, and then sort of said came to that sort of like supportive network around and in and around the nonprofit space. And it's been changing rapidly anyway since COVID. But I would say the rise of AI has really, really, really shifted sort of the kind of the role of the consultant. We again have both been in like fundraising, kind of advice, sort of strategy, and then how does that work in your technology, and how do we help make you, make the best use of these tools, and like every one of these tools, and sort of therefore our role in sort of being a technologist around how to help folks use the tools. It's like literally on, I don't even know what sort of like analogy I can make about how fast it's changing that would adequately. So as you've been kind of in your own journey the last couple of years, we talked about this, the idea of like advent of AI has changed so much for so many people, and it's obviously still we're in the jello. It hasn't hardened. We don't know. It's very much moving and shaping with us in it, swimming. How has that impacted you? And like as your role in that agency life, what's led you to sort of start doing the work that you're doing now?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with all of that in terms of, the time that I've spent in my career being like code switching between trying to explain technology to organizations that are trying to engage in technology to support their work, either in fundraising or advocacy. So I would say like 4 years ago, let's say 4 years ago, it's been a while now, when the GPTs were coming out in those early days and everybody was talking about how this is going to radically change the business. I had a team of 24 people and copywriters, designers, developers, and I took a very protectionist approach. I was very much coming off of the crypto world and the world of the gig economy, being like, here we go again. The legislative gaps are just going to lead to more consumption of resources by a few big companies. They're going to steal our content and take our jobs, and we got to do something about this, everybody. Like, we can't just sit idly by. And that was what I said for 2 years. Internally, in our own world at Grass Rides, we were very careful about these technologies, not adapting them into our work. We were protectionist about our work. We were protectionist about our people, and that was the right approach for sure. And I still think there's room and space for that conversation to continue to happen
Sure.
in many worlds. I don't want to. I mean, I do not believe in an AI feature that replaces jobs with AI. I think that is the most cynical approach to anything, right? But we're in a fighting position here because everything I said happened, right? Like the that legislative gap has meant that these organizations have grown to immense power, and influence in politics and business globally. And we have seen job loss, and we have seen careers and segments of work lose value from people because AI is seen as a place to replace it. So I want to like say that is also true of my journey in this work. But there was also this other thing that was happening in the world of software engineering. Things were changing at a much more rapid pace,
Mm-hmm.
and as a developer, I started to want to understand that stuff more. And so I went through a kind of similar journey that many software engineers have been through in the past couple of years, which is we started using the tools, things like Claude Code, things like Cursor, and the first thing that happens is we had an existential crisis, and we thought to ourselves, this is crazy. It's over. Like
It's over.
this, the world is never going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I in this work anymore? What is my role?
Exactly.
And we slept with looking at the ceiling for a couple nights, and I think that's a valid approach to all of this. Like that's a valid perspective. It is disruptive technology.
It is.
But the next thing that happened is also true. Is also true. I started to use the tools, and I started to have fun again in this work. And it's like software engineering is a frustrating job. It is pushing a boulder up the hill and being crushed by it 100 times in a day. It is one line of code taking days and hours to correct. Constant research, constant learning, constant trying to keep up. And it stifles creativity. So much of that is just stifling your creativity. Sure, you can have little wins and bouts of joy throughout all of that when you overcome these obstacles, but
Right.
a lot of times it just leads to things just being abandoned and moving on because you have limited time and limited resources.
Yeah, or you're just like, I can't solve it all. Yeah, right.
So being the dopamine addict my brain is, living with ADHD, it started to bring a lot of joy to my work. And as I started to use it more, I was able to take ideas, creative ideas. I wonder if I can build this. I wonder if I can do this, and actually bring them to life in very short periods of time. And I think that is something that I felt was like missing in my understanding of this as well, which was like, this tool does have this tool, this AI tool, these AI tools do have a place in changing how we work, how we use our brains, what we spend our time doing, and it can amplify this other side of work, which can be an expression of creativity and joy. And so that's what I was able to find
Love it.
just over a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep going.
So, and in doing that, and kind of like a year ago, kind of coming off of this, transition, grass riots kind of starting to close down, like in response to the changes off of the pandemic, the changes in the landscape of the sector, and just our structure and our work, I found myself with a lot more time and very listless in terms of like what to do with it. And somehow I always try to find a way to fill it instead of taking a break. But I started to talk to other developers in our sector, other product owners, product developers, platform owners, founders, people who had spent a lot of time building early in their careers, but they then moved into more administrative work.
Right.
But we're confronted with the same thing I was, which is like, this technology is so disruptive. I don't understand it. How is it going to shape things going forward? And they had all come to a very similar experience. We
Yeah.
were all looking at the ceiling for a couple nights. We all started to use this technology, but then coming out of it was this question I would ask them at the end of every conversation, was like, but are you having more fun? And they would all say yes.
Yes.
Say yes. The roadblocks were cleared. The creative passion, the pursuits, they were there was a roadmap for those. And I could tell you, I look at LinkedIn and I see those same people posting about changes in their software, things that they've built, new features. It is an exciting time in the space of software engineering.
Yeah.
It's a scary time for many. It is a transition for sure, but I don't think this is going to be a space that leads to less human work.
Right.
I think my hope is that it leads to a space of more creativity, and that's what I'm trying to bring to what I do.
I love so much of that. And I think that I've heard this kind of echoed through some of the different conversations. Not everybody obviously is coming in from a developer seat. So I think it's even more interesting to hear from that framework of saying, I'm not like, you were like, oh my God, it's this crisis moment. But then the idea of like, what is it unlocking for you that was many roadblocks sort of before? And I've heard the phrase like AI as a space of creating more joy and creativity is sort of an interesting moment that it's hard for folks who are still in the throes of the crisis moment, I think, to sort of feel like you have to break through that and get past the idea of it's going to take all our jobs and all that kind of stuff. Or I think you just have to sort of live with, for the moment anyway, and again, like we can try and fight it in small ways. The idea, like obviously it's consolidated all this insane power, even more in these few companies, that is terrifying and horrifying in many ways. But also you go, okay, I'm going to kind of put that in a bubble, and I'm going to have to just be like, okay, that's the reality that we're in right now. But also, what are ways that we can turn that joy and creativity into creating things that actually can really still turn around and help the sector in maybe different or more powerful ways than we were able to do it in more of just that agency consulting way. Because to your point, the timeline from idea to actual live product is so much shorter. And the learning there just helps you do the next one better, and then the next one better, and more, more efficient or whatever. So I think it's like this weird moment. I love the way you kind of phrase the getting through those various stages. It's not the trough of disillusionment and all that kind of stuff, but it's more of the like breakthrough of what's my role here now as a person that's been sitting in sort of a digital technical seat, helping a sector use the digital capabilities to do the work that they're doing better, more efficiently, whatever. And now there's like a whole different ocean, I think, of like possibilities that it's like very exciting, I think, where there's like, oh, this is actually a very different kind of conversation than we would ever obviously been able to have in like the late teens or something. Like it just is like, whoa, this is like game changing. So out of that, you take your background as you've helped a lot of folks with fundraising, advocacy, whatever. Now you're like, okay, I'm a developer. Now you're in this like building in the AI space. Tell us about your product. Like, tell us about the
Yeah,
things you've been building that you actually just launched into the world, and like how that a little bit how it came to be, and then like what's
yeah,
going on with that right now. I'm
yeah.
super interested.
Yeah. Well, let me talk about who it's for
Yeah.
first, because I
Perfect.
think that that's an interesting conversation. Because I think you know, and I think at the table of agency, people who get together at a conference and have a drink after a conference, we talk. And we have the privilege and honor of being able to be in a lot of different spaces at once, right?
Yeah.
Across verticals in our sector, across issues, across organization types, the
Right.
scale of organizations, multinational to small local.
Right.
The role of digital has been in a crisis for much longer than the pandemic. I mean,
Right.
the digital roles in organizations have been at an inflection point for as long as I've been here, because we've just seen that they're almost practically unsustainable in most charities or organizations. And Ryan Miller, who was on this podcast, Spark and Signal Strategies, we ran a study on this, engaging with leaders in organizations about the role of digital and digital roles and digital employment in the sector.
Right.
And it was about I'm going to say 2018, 2019, the report came out. And it wasn't looking good back then, and it's only gotten worse. The fact is that if you're in a digital role in a charity or nonprofit, the amount of things you have to know and be responsible for
It's
on a
big.
daily basis is growing,
Yeah.
and the amount of support that you get in building the skills that you need, whether they're technical or strategic skills or just analytical skills, software skills, using specific software, it's less and less.
Yes.
The turnover is higher,
Right.
and the salaries are lower, and there's nowhere to go once you have a job. I mean, it's very few prospects moving up the ladder in an organization,
Yeah.
and that's not true everywhere. There are some great leaders who have built great programs and great teams, but they are on the rare side.
It's
Um,
true.
and now bring AI into this world. We are saying don't use these tools. Like you can't, don't put our data there. Don't touch them. I know we have Google Workspace and Gemini's there, but we don't have an AI policy. Please don't use those.
Mhm.
The board hasn't approved it. We don't have the budget, and we don't understand what this is, so we can't train you on how to use it. And we're scared our donors will find out we wrote an email with an LLM,
The tool.
and that's changing too. But that's been what we've been seeing.
Yes. It's still pretty
And
prevalent.
so,
Okay. I still think
what's
that's
that?
I still think that's quite prevalent in the sector. Just to be clear, that's what I
And
was
it's
saying.
kind of why I checked out of the conversation a year ago, because I couldn't stand thinking about having to continue to have that conversation over and over and over again. It's just not the role I felt I could play.
I was like,
So I wasn't going to be able to bring anything to the table in that role. I could see the problem. It
right.
existed in the conversations I was having, and that was just the roadblock for anything else to happen.
Right.
Um, and it was when my good friend George Irish passed away that
Oh,
I came to this realization that I wasn't going to be able to do that without him. And he was such a important inspiration in terms of like my work in this space, and where the person that the sector needed talking about AI, getting people excited about it, but excited about building, and he did that for me, and he put that excitement in me, and so that's what I cared for, and maybe isolated myself a little bit in those months,
yeah.
uh, but that's what I felt we needed, and I sort of started building for that person that I was when I first came to the sector, the
Mhm.
digital strategist who is tasked with knowing everything,
Right.
who is working late, who's hitting send on all those emails, who's hitting publish, coordinating their agencies, who's having to publish reports. And I wanted to deliver some of the experiences I was having with AI
Mm.
for that person.
Love that.
Because I think they're invisible here. And I think they've been invisible in this conversation.
Yeah.
That we haven't quite reached the place where the enterprise tools that are being built are for them. They're for a different person. They're for a marketer. right now, or they're for somebody, maybe on the fundraising strategy side. This is like very numbers driven work. But the
Right.
person who has to sit there and is responsible for a lot of this work, they're invisible in the space. Nobody's building for them. And I know that job. That's the job I do.
Oh,
That's
wow.
the job I train people to do.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't just building for them, I was building for me because I kind of felt like I knew what they were going through.
Yes.
When I started to have conversations with people about what problems they were having, I started to look for problems to solve. And that's what led to Crescendo, which is the open source platform that I've released this week that is about kind of focusing on fundraising performance optimization from
Okay.
the perspective of our fundraising pages. We publish these all the time. We drive traffic to them. We pay for paid ads to come to these. We measure our conversions.
100%.
We try to improve them little by little, but everything's working against us. And the amount of time it takes to go to our CRMs and to Google Analytics to tie everything together, to build a report, to think about like a strategy in terms of like what can change, what should we change, what are the levers we have. That's a lot of work. And even as an agency, when we're paid to do that
Right.
work, it's a long process. It's very retrospective. It's like, how did it perform in the
Right.
past, not how is it performing now? And then it's very hard to actually move anything forward, to get anything done to impact the change, even if you have solid insights, even if you have really good recommendations. How do you embed those in the organization moving forward? And so I thought about what could we do with agents and an agentic approach to change that, to help improve that, to bring this idea of performance, ongoing performance measurement and optimization, something that is actually like accessible. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so many things. I love that. Well, I love who you are, I like the way you frame it, who this is built for, what are the use cases, and exactly the reality that I'm sure if folks are listening, they're like, yes, like whether you're doing that job yourself inside your organization, you know that job and you know how difficult it is and how many different threads are sort of tied together in that space and the difficulty of just like the now I think just the multitude of roles and things that are happening that get shoved down onto like one or two people inside an organization to like get all this stuff done and then learn more about it and then optimize it and why aren't we seeing better results and all this pressure all the time for you when you're like, I'm trying to juggle like 17 million things. I didn't go to school for this. I don't know. I kind of thought I'd work for a cool organization because I love the cause or these types of things. And then um, it, um, oh,
Oh,
it pounds down on top of you.
yeah. Sorry, you just froze a little bit there. Oh, are you there? Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, I was just hearing. We'll keep going. Why don't I just jump in and talk a little bit about, one of the. Oh, hi. Jen's going to be back with us any minute. Well, let me just say this. You can go to GitHub, and the project is called Crescendo. And it's under the Orchestra AI account. There will be notes after this with a link there. It's an open source project. Right now, the platform supports anybody who's using engaging networks. And this was on purpose. This is because I built this with a client in mind who was having this challenge. And they're an engaging networks client. And what it's able to do is it's able to merge data from engaging networks, all your fundraising performance data, to your marketing performance data in Google Analytics, and create a window, a view, the context necessary for an agent to help you with the evaluation of that data, the opportunity that's in that data, an assessment of what you can improve on your fundraising page, whether it's the content, your donation arrays, whether it's the design, identify technical challenges. The idea being is that we could have instead of just a dashboard that reports on numbers where we think about things retrospectively, a live view. And hi, Jen, you're back. I'll just finish this one sentence because kind of trying to keep the air warm. A live view on your data that you can then have a conversation about that data with an agent. And it was a hobby project, but once it was done, I felt like there's a lot for that digital person to learn with and start to engage with how to use AI in a very different way than just generating text and generating copies. That's what I was hoping to deliver.
Wow.
A little bit of a wow experience with AI is what I'm hoping to deliver.
Wow, I want a wow experience with AI. I have a wow experience with AI all the time, honestly, to be fair. Like I actually love I know sorry, my internet of course just died in the middle of a live show, which is amazing. I love that. But that's what you do. You deal with technology and it's fine. But I think what I just heard you say though, and I'll just build upon is the idea of helping folks get past the sort of just question response or thing response of what these tools can do, which I think is where you're obviously then trying to take people of like crack past that, please, dear God. Like that's just like so scratching the surface of like what is possible with these tools. So I love that you're
Yeah.
building a tool and like to help people kind of understand how some of this connects and it's like how you can actually get more out of it than just the kind of more that basic question response stuff, which I feel like is like kindergarten or something. Like it's like, it's like kindergarten. It's only like learning to read for the first time. And then you're like, oh, now I'm like able to write short stories and now I'm able to write novels and now I'm able to really like, get much deeper into what's possible
Mm.
in these tools. So I am excited. I haven't even seen a demo and I've like we talked about it before. You're like, I'm working on this thing and then it went live and we haven't had a chance to dig into it, but I'm excited to schedule some time with you, learn more about it and see it in action. And so how are you sort of rolling it out into the world? Like how can you
Yeah.
see it or what's the
Yeah.
folks are
So
more?
right now, I'm hoping in the follow up to the show, we'll publish a couple links. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well. I'll be publishing about it over the coming
Okay.
weeks. My goal is to schedule a few webinars to help interested people get it set up, get it running, and test it out, showcase it, demo some of its features, but also talk through what I think are some of the interesting parts about it that should change the way we think about AI in our work. One thing is like it's open source. It's also open model. Like it's compatible with, ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, and Gemini. You can add your API key there, but it also works on fully local models as well.
Cool.
And that's something that I think is important for our sector to realize is that very soon, I would say in the next year, the frontier is going to be with local open source, open weight
Yeah.
models that are air gapped. They're not on the internet. You're not giving your data to a corporation, right? You can run local, very capable, very powerful models on an appliance, right? Like a computer that sits in your office and on your network
Mm-hmm.
that can do some of the processing and automation for you without the concerns of violating the data rights or privacy
Right.
rights in that data. And we shouldn't be just handing over that in these cases. And so even in the approach I've taken in this platform, it's to not have the LLMs do the processing of information, right? The LLMs are there to interpret, but code does the rest. Like it's code that's doing it. It's code that's getting the data from Google Analytics. It's code that's getting the data from engaging networks. It's code that's building the database. The agents are brought in very purposeful ways to help with the interpretation of that and some of the processing, but I'm not giving them free reign to
Right.
systems, and things like that. So being very considerate of like where we're at as a sector, even though you could,
Right.
we aren't ready to take that leap yet.
No, I think it's an interesting space. I've heard lots of people talking about this. The future of all this work is going to like not force, but people are going to realize the best applications of this are kind of going back to local and like going back to the idea of like, oh
Mhm.
my, everything was like client server and everything was running out of your closet, and you're like, now it's all in the cloud, and you're like, well, this you might see a return more to some of these local closed systems for exactly these reasons, but how and what those local closed systems are doing is completely different than what we did in the 90s and things like that. So it's interesting. It's an interesting loop, for those of us who've been doing this for long enough. Have been like, oh, okay, here we are. Like, let's see what does come back out of the cloud and what do you do in the cloud. I think it's going to be an interesting space to watch because I definitely am seeing that in conversations I'm having. People are like wanting to have their zero data retention local system for a lot of those reasons, and they're all legit. I mean, those are legitimate problems and concerns that we're having with all the cloud-based stuff. So I'm gonna say, sorry for my little blip out there. The internet is the internet. It's only so reliable, but and I'll watch the recording later to see what I missed of my own show. But Riverside was recording it all, so it's all fine, which is good. But we will definitely put links. So anything that you want to showcase, obviously you can send me later. I'll put it both in the blog post and the LinkedIn post that I do after these shows every week. And then obviously, yes, people should follow Ryan. And it's Baillargeon, which I think is a beautiful name. And everyone's like, you can't pronounce it. It's French, everyone. It's French. It's fine. And to see what you're doing, not just obviously with this particular iteration, but obviously these are just some of the beginnings of like, okay, great. I know that again, you'll be learning and continuing to iterate because you're very mission minded about this space. And like, I want to help the people doing this hard work. Again, the landscape is like on a rapid, crazy roller coaster right now, and we're going to try and keep up. But the whole point is how can we actually now do what we've been doing in sort of the agency space to now evolve into how can I help folks inside the organizations use the technology that's now available even more in more interesting and innovative ways than we've been able to do in the past. So I love what you're doing and how you're sort of taking your decades of experience in this space, understanding the folks in the orgs on the front lines doing the work, how to best help them is like literally just heart centered. So thank you so much for doing that and focusing your energy and finding joy at the same time in all of that.
Thank you.
That's yeah.
Absolutely.
So people know how to get in touch with you. Is there any last things you want to share with folks, or are we good? Just stay open.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think one of the reasons that this is an open source project is, and I'm hoping that like remove some barriers to adoption. I don't want people to have to go through a ton of hoops to try something out. So I'm gonna even like work with people. If this is something you think you might be interested in trying, but you're not quite sure how to, get approval or in your, like what do you have to do, or you have concerns, get in touch with me. The other thing is I'm looking for other people who are interested in building. If you're in this sector and you're a builder, or you want to build something, or you have an idea, reach out. I want the builders in this sector to be coming together and to form a community. And maybe there's already ones out there I'm not a part of. Invite me to them. So I'd love to chat. But you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'll be posting about Crescendo there. And thank you thank you, Jen, for this time.
Yeah, I love it. Appreciate you so much. So next week on Untangled, I'm going to be joined by Valerie Ehrlich, who's from Mission Bloom. We're going to be talking about responsible AI. What does that even mean? So it's some of those themes of like, what does it mean to use these tools in a responsible manner? That's kind of wide open interpretation a little bit. So she's going to give her take on that. But that's a space where she evolves too, where it's like, okay, when we talk about this, some of the things we just even talked about today, what is a responsible, it's a heavy word. What does that really mean? Let's unpack that a little bit because it's an interesting time. Again, back to like the themes we can talk about almost every week right now is sort of like the tools, the power these companies have. How do we use them? How do we use them in interesting ways? And where is it moving? I'm really interested in watching this happen in the space of saying, you've helped us understand what's possible, but now we're going to sort of like go, thanks, I'm going to peace out and go local. And that's my most responsible thing I can do is keep it private, keep my data private, keep my donors' data, and all that stuff. Keep it really like locked down and private is probably one of the most responsible things. So we'll see what Valerie has to say next week. But people get a hold of you, Ryan. Thank you again, you so much for your time, and everyone else have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll see you next week on another episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.